Welcome to the Greatness Together podcast. Curious minds unite. Mother-daughter conversations that delve into the heart of psychology. Thanks for joining us. So Simonne, I met a really interesting lady back when I was 29 years old. I remember exactly because you were just born.
I remember when I was 29.
Do you?
Yeah.
How was it, Simonne?
Good years. You know, the Civil War was ending.
Yeah.
There were free gummy bears being passed out.
Wow.
The sky had a sun.
She has lived a long, adventurous life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was that year good for you too?
So when I was 29, I had a mortgage, I had a job, I had tiny children. I was recovering from postpartum depression.
Oh.
I can't say I had that, it was not a jazz hands time in my life.
I miss it every day.
So the reason why I remember this woman so much is because she said that her goals as a family was to be bored. And I thought, what on earth is she talking about? The opposite of what I want to be is bored. And when I said, what does being bored as a family look like? She said, just not being busy, that we're just trying to just be present in our life. And this was before the whole mindfulness, yoga movement, all that stuff. I was completely confounded. And it wasn't until years later, and we started to talk about it last episode, that I started to realize why this was so, why there was something interesting here.
Yep.
What did we find about boredom when we were doing some research for this podcast?
The pandemic one?
Yeah.
Well, I first talked about boredom being a good thing, like you were mentioning. But as we have looked into it more, specifically revolving around the pandemic, we found this body of research that said that people with boredom proneness were more likely to get diagnosed with things like well, I guess you don't get diagnosed with stress, but like to build stress, depression, anxiety. What was the other one? Like negative effects. Mm-hmm. But it was when people used their boredom to do creative things, like try a new hobby, pick up marathon running. Their well-being was higher, and along with well-being comes optimism and high self-regard. But then when those people use their boredom to grieve over the fact that they can't see their friends, they can't go out, and they other bad things about the pandemic. I could probably go on forever. That's when those negative effects started to come along. So, boredom is good, but bad. But we'll talk about the positivenesses in a second.
Well, I think that it is very helpful for us to use the pandemic and other times in our life where we have experienced isolation in an unhealthy way to give a counterbalance to the whole concept that most of the time in life we can find that we are just on a grind. We're running from one task to the other. We have a culture where our children tend to be enrolled in so many things. I mean, I know for you guys, you were always involved in an art, in a sport, in a club, and of course with school, and we were commuting. Dad and I were both working, and you had before and after school care. I mean, it was a really intense, a really busy life, and it was very, very. I'm embarrassed to admit, as a person who specializes in connection, that we often suffered disconnection as a family because we had so many things going on. And that is, I think, the opposite, what we didn't see in that study, and we actually interestingly didn't see it in other research. So maybe there's a gap of studying the value of boredom outside of, let's say, the mindfulness community, is that maybe there are the two extremes. And we've talked about this in other episodes. When things are at one extreme or the other, you're so bored and you're so isolated and not engaged in meaningful activity and relationships. And the other side being you're so much on your plate, you don't make intentional choices about what is worthy of your time. You're not sleeping well, taking time to for self-care, for relationship care, that we don't want to be in those two places, that maybe there is healthy boredom somewhere in the middle. And I'm curious for Simonne, for your life, where have you found already, at 18, that too much boredom and too little boredom is healthy or unhealthy?
Well, knowing the culture we live in today and technology and everything and social media, like I feel like we always need to be engaged like every second of the day. Whenever we have a spare moment, we're always listening to the earliest podcast or most recent podcast, most recent music, most
Mm-hmm.
recent TikTok. Um, and I feel like, well, not I feel like we researched it, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
during those times like of boredom that you're using to like listen to that music, listen to that podcast, it's more valuable to just be bored because your brain will process things it hasn't like had time to process yet or think about yet and come up with new ideas. Like in the shower, I never listen to music because that's always my time to think, and I always think of
Mm-hmm.
so many new things and process so many things, and because that's my brain's time to just like
Mm-hmm.
take a breather and like process. That's like the big thing about all this. And it's like if your brain is just like constantly going, always stimulated, it's never going to have time for those things. Like even even when we're doing this, we're sitting here and you're talking and I'm not the one whose brain is like stimulated because I'm not the one who's talking. I sometimes like catch like mistakes you could say or like things you're leaving out. Like whenever we
Mm.
do the show notes before, I'm like I remember like the things we've talked about, and as I'm sitting here, I kind of think of like what we're missing, but if I'm the one talking, I would never catch that.
Right.
So being bored or being unstimulated like helps you catch those things you could be missing out on,
Mm-hmm.
and like I feel like improve yourself all around, but it
Mm-hmm.
depends on what you're doing when you're bored. Like during like going
Mm.
back to this pandemic example, like if you're using your boredom time to grieve or mourn,
Mm-hmm.
you're just going to get those negative negative benefits. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Is-
Negative consequences.
Negative
Yeah.
consequences. But if you're using it to like reflect, like even when you're driving, like sometimes when I'm driving, I'll just turn my music off. I'll turn everything off
Mm-hmm.
because like from if I've been studying all day and the only time I have to be bored is to get to class, like I'll use those 15 minutes when I'm driving to like reflect on what I've been studying or what I'm going to be learning, and I've like it helps me process a lot of what I learned.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the same with like sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
Like your brain processes what you've been learning because I guess like it's bored and it's not stimulated.
Right.
Like that goes to show the benefits of it,
Mm-hmm.
but just when you're doing the right things with your boredom.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about leveraging the healthy, productive part of not always having to be on. And that's maybe where we feel this sense of pressure in our culture that we have to be productive all the time, all of our waking hours. And then when we're not, we say things like, oh, we wasted all that time scrolling through social media. Well, maybe that's actually, if you're doing that, maybe that's actually a sign that you need to not be productive, that you just need to give your accomplishing side of yourself some downtime.
And even even going back to this article, I feel like it's very relevant because like a lot of the reasons why we're always stimulated and always like finding these things to do is because we don't want to go back to this like state of boredom that was followed by depression, stress, anxiety,
Right.
negative effects when we were in the pandemic and when we were bored. So we like fill our minds with these things because we don't want to go back to these feelings. Like I guess people who protook
Up
who took
to
part
partook in, yes, partook.
partook who did did
Did,
who
yes,
did
who did.
those creative things. Like I guess
There's a benefit.
there's a benefit,
Yeah.
sure, and they do that, I'm sure, in their post post COVID lives today.
And I think about when people are on vacation and about how they try new things or they enjoy just laying on the beach if you're going to down south, or when Dad and I went on our anniversary trip to Washington. Although we had a lot of things to do, our brains and our to-do list were not running the show. So we walked around art museums and we just took in the art, and if we went to eat lunch somewhere, we just took our time with it and we enjoyed the food. We tasted the food so much deeper, and I remember Dad and I sitting in this little cute little French bistro on the water, and we went there 3 times. That's how much we loved it. And I remember there was this moment where Dad said, "Do I taste vanilla bean in this cheesecake?" And I thought, I've never had him say, "Do I taste vanilla bean?" Ever in my life. But it was because we were in this slowed down mode. And probably he has tasted vanilla bean, and no doubt in a cheesecake. It was very good cheesecake, I do have to say. And we've never eaten so much cheesecake in one week, and I have to say. So maybe he was just, he was just in the cheesecake zone. But the point is, like, how often do we miss out on opportunities to truly experience our life? You know what I mean? Because we are so distracted, because we are so occupied, because we are not focused on in the moment. We're not present. I think that's the word I'm looking for, present.
Yeah. And going back to that vacation thing you were talking about, I thought you were gonna go like the beach vacation route.
I was going to.
Oh.
I changed my mind.
Oh. Well, then I'll talk about it.
Yes.
Like when people go on vacations and do like beach vacations, like their state of boredom kind of turns into a state of like relaxation, because like if you're tanning or sitting by the pool or beach all day, yeah, you might be bored because you don't have like TikTok right beside you, but it gives you that time that you are missing during your work season to take in time with your family or your partner and your surroundings and learn new cultures. And if you were just like on TikTok the whole time, how would you learn how to say hello in Spanish?
And how do you say hello in Spanish?
Gracias. It's hola.
Hola.
It's hola.
Hola.
I know.
What about Portuguese?
What? Hello?
Hello in Portuguese.
Oi.
Oi.
Or you could say hola.
Hola. What about in Italian?
Ciao.
What about in Australian? Since you're going to Australia.
Oi, mate.
Oi, mate. Oi. Good eye, mate.
Good. Oh, good eye.
Good eye. Oi means, oi is like, oi, or is what they say in England. Like, oi!
Oh.
Like,
aggressive.
Aggressive.
Darn.
Yeah, you don't want to say oi to the
Throw your
Aussies.
tea at
The Aussies
ya.
are pretty chill folks, so they might be
Okay,
like,
good.
oof, who let the angry Canadian in the country revoke her visa? Yeah, yeah. So when you talk about the benefit on when and what you notice on vacation when you just let yourself relax, maybe we get a chance to give ourselves permission to relax when we're not on vacation too.
Right.
And that's maybe the where we started originally in our last podcast episode on busyness, where this came up and why we're so surprised that we couldn't find this really positive research base about the benefits of boredom is because we call boredom the benefit science of boredom. I think it's in the mindfulness and the presence and like the consciousness side of the research equation. And what we're seeing, the people who are studying boredom, as we've been finding it, are in the mental health side of things. So, what if we could, in fact, experience the benefits of in other times in our life of boredom and bring those in so that there's a combination of the science, that there is a being present, being intentional about what you most want and need. So being self-aware, being mind aware, being conscious of and present in your intentionality, and also recognizing when you're procrastinating, when you're avoiding doing things that are healthy, when you are not, when you maybe, your life could be full of things and tasks, but none of them make you feel a sense of accomplishment, or when you're so mired in your obligations, you're not meaningfully connecting with other people. These are some of the complexities and the benefit of us continuing to be curious about boredom and why we think researchers, please keep studying this because we think that there's a lot of benefits and a balanced argument here that we're not seeing in the literature. What do you think, Simonne? Are you going to be the one studying that?
100% gonna write my thesis on it.
All right.
Or no, I already wrote my thesis on it when I was 20.
Yeah, nobody believes that you're not young and youthful. Sorry.
But I
You
just
just
moisturize.
yeah,
And
yeah.
sunscreen.
Yeah. I feel like you're too young and dewy and just chill looking to be somebody with a huge mortgage and live through the Civil War as you so claimed
I
earlier.
meditate.
No, you don't. Do you?
No.
Oh.
No, that's what keeps me grounded.
Okay.
Every time I meditate, I yawn and fall asleep.
Mm,
I can't.
sounds.
And I think of everything I need to do. But again, I guess that kind of contradicts everything I've said. But
It sounds like you're on a journey. You're on a journey of discovering what boredom means to you, Simonne.
yeah,
You
but
should listen to this podcast episode. It's a good one.
I'm kind of, yeah, because when I was talking, I wasn't processing what I was saying. So maybe if I hear what I'm saying, I'll process it.
And isn't that true? That's a nice callback to our episode on introversion, extroversion for those of us extroverts who need some time to listen and just process. And we can take that from our cue from the introverts, the people with an introverted preference of the world. Simonne, thank you for this scrumptious conversation. I appreciate us being able to meander through these, these interesting concepts because you don't sometimes realize how much of an opinion and how fixed you are in your belief system about it. But it demonstrates how much what we need in life is formulated as we believe. It's an opinion, it's a belief system, and there's always an interesting counterposition to it. So I appreciated the opportunity of being able to dig into this research to be able to also appreciate the counterbalance, both sides of this. So thanks, Simonne, for coming to the Insight Party.
Me pleasure.
So we'll be back again for another episode of the Greatness Together podcast. If you wouldn't mind rating this, giving a thumbs up to wherever you listen to your podcasts, that would be great. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Bye, everybody. Ciao.
I wonder if they could hear the construction outside.
I don't know. Can you hear the construction outside, everybody? We have noisy things. Bye. Thanks so much for joining us for the Greatness Together podcast. Never miss an episode. Subscribe wherever you catch your podcasts. Yours in greatness, Simonne and Sarah.